The world ended in 2 hours. 2 hours of nuclear fire that turned every major city into ash, collapsed every government, and left humanity scrambling in the dirt for scraps of food and clean water that barely existed anymore. But while everyone was dying down here, something was happening up there. Before October 23, 2077, the United States wasn't just fighting a resource war on the ground. They were building things in space. Orbital stations, military platforms, satellites that could do a lot more than just take pictures, and I mean a lot more. Weapons, surveillance systems, possibly even stations with crews aboard them. All of it circling a planet that was about to lose every single person sitting at mission control. And the wildest part, when the bombs dropped, nobody turned any of it off. There was no shutdown sequence. No one hit a button that said, hey, we're all dying down here, maybe power down the death satellites. Nope, everything just kept going. So what actually happened to space and Fallout, and what's still up there watching right now? Because trust me, there's more floating above the wasteland than most people realize, and honestly, some of it is kind of terrifying when you actually sit down and think about it. Space race. To understand what's floating above the wasteland right now, you first gotta understand just how obsessed pre-war America was with getting off the ground. And I mean, genuinely obsessed. Not in the way we talk about space today where it's all excitement and wonder and cool rover pictures. No. This was military obsession. Cold, calculated, resource-driven desperation that the government wrapped in a shiny patriotic bow and sold to its citizens as progress, when really most of it was about figuring out how to blow things up from higher and higher altitudes. The United States and China weren't just fighting over oil fields and Alaskan territory, they were racing to control orbit. Both nations understood that whoever owned the skies had a key advantage above the rest, and if you extended that reach to orbital levels, there would be no contesting. It's the ultimate high ground, right? And neither side was about to let the other one have it without a fight. At least, that's what the arms race between them strongly suggests. USSA, the United States Space Administration, was the face of America's space program. Think NASA, but with a way bigger budget, way fewer ethics committees, and a direct line straight to the Department of Defense. They were building things up there that had nothing to do with science or exploration. Well, okay, some of it did, but the lion's share of the money went towards stuff that could deploy weapons, spy on people, or run experiments that were probably too dangerous to do on home soil. Yeah, real heartwarming stuff. Nothing says for the good of humanity like putting a weapons platform in low Earth orbit, but I mean, that was the pre-war mindset, right? If you can weaponize it, then you should weaponize it. If you can't, throw money at enough people until some of them can figure out how. Now here's where it gets interesting, because this wasn't just theoretical. They actually built this stuff. Orbital stations, both manned and unmanned, were operational before the Great War. The technology was there. The infrastructure was there. And when October 23rd came around and everything went to hell, nobody flipped a switch to shut any of it down. That's the thing about space that I think people forget. When the world ends below, everything above just keeps on going. Gravity doesn't care about your politics. Orbit doesn't care about nuclear war. Whatever was up there on October 22nd, 2077 was still up there on October 24th, and, well, a lot of it is probably still up there right now, which brings us to the part that actually matters. What do we know for a fact is still floating around up there? Still orbiting, so the biggest confirmed piece of pre-war space tech still kicking, or at least still existing in some form, has to be the network of satellites that the US government launched in the decades leading up to the war. And these weren't your average communication satellites. I mean, some of them were, sure, basic relay stuff for military and civilian use, whatever, standard infrastructure, but others were something way more concerning. We're talking surveillance arrays that could track individual targets on the ground, missile guidance systems that were tied directly into the nuclear arsenal, and yeah, platforms that could potentially rain down some very bad days on anyone below. Think about that for a second. The very systems that helped guide the bombs to their targets on October 23rd might still be up there and still operational, drifting in orbit, powered by fusion cells or reactors that were designed to run for centuries, just sitting there waiting for a signal that nobody alive knows how to send. Well, almost nobody. And that's where it gets scary. In Fallout 76, the Kovac Muldoon orbital platform is still active. This thing is a full orbital space station with an onboard AI that has been running by itself for over 200 years. There were no maintenance crews, no software updates, no human beings so much as looking at it, and it's still going, still broadcasting its signal. The platform was built for military surveillance, and it even has orbital strike capability, which, yeah, that's a fun combination to have floating around unsupervised for 2 centuries. That should tell you everything about how seriously the pre-war government took their space infrastructure infrastructure. They built this stuff to outlast civilization, which, as it turns out, it did. Good job, I guess. It's kind of hard to celebrate that one, and Kovacs Muldoon isn't alone up there. The Enclave, those lovely remnants of the pre-war shadow government who somehow always managed to cockroach their way through everything, they maintained access to satellite networks well into the post-war period. In Fallout 2, they were coordinating operations from their oil rig using orbital communications. In Fallout 3, same deal across the Capital Wasteland. These satellites didn't just survive the war, they became one of the Enclave's most valuable assets. I spent way too many hours going through terminal entries and wiki pages cross-referencing all of this. And honestly, the rabbit hole goes deep, but it was worth it, because the picture you get when you put it all together is kind of insane. When everyone else on Earth is communicating by radio at best and sending a guy on foot at worst, having access to orbital satellites is like having a smartphone in medieval Europe. It's an absurd advantage that no other faction can even come close to matching, and honestly, I think it's one of the key reasons the Enclave punched so far above their weight for so long. I don't think this gets enough credit in discussions about faction power in Fallout. We always talk about power armor, energy weapons, vertibirds, all the flashy stuff, but the satellite network? That's the real backbone. You can't fight what you can't see, and you definitely can't fight something that's watching you from space while you're still trying to build a radio that doesn't catch fire. But satellites and unmanned platforms are one thing. What gets really unsettling is when you start asking whether there were actual people up there when everything went wrong, and trust me, that question leads somewhere dark: manned missions. Okay, so this is the part that genuinely keeps me up at night when I think too hard about Fallout lore, and yeah, I know that's a weird thing to lose sleep over, but hear me out. Were there people in space when the bombs dropped? Because think about it. If the US had manned orbital stations, and we know they had the technology and definitely the motivation, then there's a very real chance that astronauts were floating up there on October 23rd, 2077. Real people stuck forward, watching through reinforced glass as the planet below them lit up like, well, like the end of the world. Because that's exactly what it was. No Way Home. Mission control goes silent. Every frequency is just static. And below you, the city lights you used to see at night are being replaced one by one with the glow of nuclear detonations. I know that sounds super dramatic, but honestly, I think it might be one of the most horrifying scenarios in the entire Fallout universe, and we barely ever talk about it. Everyone focuses on the vaults, the surface survivors, the ghouls, who somehow walked through the blasts and kept going. But what about the people who were literally above all of it, close enough to see everything, too far away to do a single thing about it? And the games don't give us a clear answer on what happened to them, which in a lot of ways makes it worse. We know manned space travel existed. We know orbital stations were up and running. The logical conclusion is, yeah, there were almost certainly people up there when it all ended. And their fate is one of the biggest unanswered questions in the franchise. Did their life support systems fail within weeks? Did they try re-entry with nobody on the ground to guide them in? I mean, can you imagine trying to land a spacecraft when every landing facility on the continent is a smoking crater? Did some of them last longer than you'd expect? Rationing oxygen, watching the fallout clouds spread across whole continents through the window? We just don't know. And honestly, Bethesda leaving this vague might be one of the smartest lore decisions they've made, because whatever you imagine is probably worse than anything they could officially confirm. Yeah, that's a real fun thought to carry around. You're welcome. But here's where we pivot from the tragic to the terrifying, because whatever people might have been up there are long gone. The machines, though, the weapons, those don't need oxygen, and some of them were built to last forever. Orbital weapons. If there's one thing the pre-war United States government loved more than propaganda, it was having multiple ways to destroy the same thing. Redundancy in annihilation, that was basically their motto, and space was the ultimate platform for that mindset. Now I want to be upfront here, the games don't explicitly confirm that orbital weapons were used during the Great War itself. The bombardment on October 23rd is generally described as ICBMs and submarine launches. And this is where it gets interesting to speculate. The sheer scale of what happened that day raises some questions. In roughly 2 hours, virtually every major population center on the planet was hit. That is an insane level of coverage and coordination, and while ground-based systems could theoretically pull it off, you gotta wonder whether orbital assets played any role at all. We know the platforms existed, we know they had weapons capability, and honestly, even just sitting here thinking about it, the timeline feels tight for ground systems alone. But that's speculation on my part. The games haven't confirmed it, and I want to be clear about that. The timing and precision of certain strikes is a question worth asking, even if the games haven't given us a definitive answer yet. But here's what really matters for the Wasteland today, and this part isn't speculation. If those orbital weapons platforms still exist, and we know at minimum that Kovacs Muldoon does, then the ability to cause destruction from orbit hasn't gone away. It's just been sitting idle. Any faction that figures out how to access and activate a dormant orbital weapons system has the power to basically restart a targeted apocalypse. And that's not some wild hypothetical. The Enclave has already proven they can interface with orbital tech. So if someone with even worse intentions ever cracks that same code, and let's be honest, the Enclave's restraint is already basically non-existent. So worse intentions is really saying something, then everything that's been rebuilt in the wasteland could get wiped in an afternoon. I think this is genuinely the most underexplored threat in the entire franchise. Everyone's worried about the Deathclaw nest down the road or the super mutant camp across the river. Meanwhile, there are weapons of mass destruction silently orbiting overhead. It's like leaving a loaded gun on the kitchen table and then being surprised when something goes wrong. Honestly, the fact that nobody's accidentally triggered one yet is either a miracle or just Bethesda saving it for a really good plot point later. Speaking of things that are way up there and could change everything, let's go even further out, because the pre-war US didn't stop at orbit. They went to the moon, and what they might have left behind there could be the most important thing in the entire Fallout universe: lunar ambitions. So yeah, the pre-war United States landed on the moon. That's confirmed, it's canon, it happened. The Museum of Technology in Fallout 3 has whole exhibits about it. The Delta IX rocket was the launch vehicle designed for manned lunar missions, and the Virgo 2 lunar lander is literally sitting on display in that museum, celebrated as one of America's greatest achievements. The Virgo 2 mission put American astronauts on the lunar surface in 2052, over 2 decades before the Great War, and that's the part that really gets my brain going. 25 years. That's roughly how long the gap was between the first confirmed moon landing and the end of the world. 25 years with the budget, the technology, and the paranoid military motivation that the pre-war US had. You're telling me they landed on the moon and then just, called it a day, packed up, went home, put the lander in a museum, and moved on? I mean, maybe, but come on. In a world defined by resource wars where everyone is scrambling for every advantage they can get, where the government was pouring insane amounts of money into military technology, you'd think the moon would be pretty high on the priority list, a position so far away that no enemy on Earth could touch it. Mineral resources that the planet was running out of, a potential staging ground for even deeper space operations. It's the ultimate insurance policy. Now I gotta be honest here, the games don't explicitly confirm a permanent manned lunar base. That's important to say, and I'm not gonna pretend otherwise. But the general trajectory of pre-war tech and the sheer amount of time they had made it, I don't know, at least very plausible. Like, if you told me Bethesda had a folder somewhere with moon-based DLC written on it, I wouldn't be even a little surprised. And here's the thought that really won't leave me alone. If there is something on the moon, and if it was even partially self-sustaining, then it could theoretically still be operational. A sealed facility running on fusion power with no bombs to damage it, no fallout to contaminate it, no raiders to break in and steal everything that isn't bolted down. The single most preserved piece of pre-war civilization in existence, just sitting on a rock that nobody in the wasteland can reach. That honestly feels like the setup for the most ambitious Fallout content ever made, and if Bethesda isn't at least considering it, I'll eat a box of Fancy Lads snack cakes, the irradiated ones, every last crumb. But okay, before we get too excited about potential salvation from space, we need to come back down and talk about what orbital technology has actually been used for in the wasteland, because, spoiler alert, it's not great. Tools of control. You know what's worse than a dead satellite? One that works perfectly fine but is in the hands of someone terrible, and that's basically the story of space technology in Fallout. Every single time a faction gets access to orbital assets, every single time, they use it for power, surveillance, military coordination, threats of destruction. Not once has anyone gone, hey, maybe we could use this to, I don't know, help people? It's honestly kind of impressive how consistent selfishness is. The Enclave used their satellite access to coordinate military operations across thousands of miles. That's how a faction that was honestly pretty small in terms of actual manpower managed to project the image of a functioning continental government. They weren't everywhere at once. They just had better communication than literally everyone else because their infrastructure was in space where nobody could touch it. And I mean, how do you compete with that when your best tech is a ham radio you found in a dumpster? In Fallout 76, accessing the Kovac Muldoon platform isn't some noble quest for knowledge or rebuilding. It's another tool for combat. Another piece of pre-war military hardware getting repurposed for blowing things up rather than fixing anything. The game doesn't frame it as, let's use this to rebuild society. It frames it as, here's another way to kill stuff, because that's what space tech has become in this universe. Just another way to exert power over someone else. And this connects to something bigger that I think is honestly the saddest part of the whole Fallout universe. The tools that could help rebuild civilization keep getting used to tear it apart. A satellite network could map radiation patterns, predict rad storms, coordinate trade routes between settlements, connect communities that can't talk to each other because the infrastructure doesn't exist anymore. Instead, it monitors troop movements and calls in strikes. It's humanity's best technology being used for humanity's worst impulses. And yeah, that's completely in character for this franchise. The whole thesis of Fallout is that war never changes, and the space program might be the purest example of that theme. We reach for the stars not because we wanted to explore them, but because we wanted a better angle to shoot from. That's pretty depressing when you say it out loud, but hey, at least it's thematically consistent. Silver linings, right? Now, everything we've talked about so far has been human technology, human mistakes, human greed, but there's one more player in the space game that we absolutely cannot ignore. And this one isn't from Earth at all. Alien Factor. Aliens. The Zitans. They're real. They're canon. And they have been messing with Earth for a very, very long time. Mothership Zeta, the Fallout 3 DLC, confirmed that a straight-up alien species has been abducting humans from Earth for centuries, not merely decades. These guys were snatching people before the Great War, before nuclear technology, before anyone on Earth even knew what an atom was. We're talking way, way back. The ship itself is massive, a fully operational alien vessel parked in orbit around Earth, packed with technology that makes the most advanced pre-war human stuff look like it was built out of cardboard and good intentions. Energy weapons that vaporize targets, transport beams that pull you right off the ground, and stasis pods that kept abducted humans alive for hundreds of years without aging a day. This is technology that is so far beyond anything humanity ever built that it's not even a comparison, it's a joke. And here's the part that a lot of people either miss or kind of choose to ignore because it's uncomfortable. The Zetans might have played a role in causing the Great War. There's a recording you can find aboard Mothership Zeta, where a captured military officer is being interrogated by the aliens. The conversation involves nuclear weapons and military information. They were actively extracting details about Earth's arsenal from abducted humans. Now, whether they actually used that information to trigger the war is left ambiguous, and I think intentionally so, but the fact that they were collecting it at all, that tells you they had more than a passing interest in humanity's ability to destroy itself, and honestly, think about what that means for the Wasteland's future. If an alien civilization with technology that's centuries beyond anything we've ever built is sitting up there actively watching, and they've already shown both the ability and the willingness to mess with human affairs, then the Wasteland isn't just dealing with its own problems. It's potentially dealing with outside interference from an intelligence that sees humanity as lab rats, rather than, people. That makes recovery feel almost impossible when you think about it. It's hard enough to rebuild when the ground is toxic, the water will kill you, and super mutants are bashing down your walls. Now add, by the way, there's an alien species with god-tier technology that may or may not be pulling strings from orbit to the list, and so good luck with that nation-building project. I think this is one of the most fascinating loose threads in all of Fallout lore, and the TV show hasn't even touched it yet. When they eventually do, and I believe they will, it's going to change how we think about basically everything in this universe. Now, after everything we just covered, the aliens, the weapons, the surveillance, all of it being used for control or destruction, you'd think there's zero hope for space actually helping humanity recover. But here's the thing, the potential is actually there, and it might be the Wasteland's best shot if anyone ever figures out how to use it right. Recovery potential. So is there any world where space technology actually helps the Wasteland get better instead of worse? Let's be hopeful for exactly one section, because honestly I need it after going through all of that. The theoretical potential is honestly massive. If any faction, literally any of them, gained full access to a working satellite network and decided to use it for everyone instead of just themselves, the impact would be transformative. Real-time radiation mapping to find safe zones for expansion and weather monitoring to predict rad storms before they hit, so communities could actually prepare instead of just getting blasted. Communication relays connecting settlements across thousands of miles so people could trade, share information, coordinate defense, all the stuff that's currently impossible because nobody can reliably talk to anyone more than a few miles away, and that's just the satellites. If something like Kovac Muldoon could be repurposed for science instead of war, you'd have a research platform completely free from ground contamination. Clean experiments, clean data. Think about it. A sterile environment where pre-war knowledge could actually be rebuilt without radiation, and raiders constantly getting in the way. And this is the biggest if in the history of IFs, a lunar base exists, and someone could reach it. You'd have resources, manufacturing capability, and a genuine shot at long-term species survival that Earth might not be able to offer anymore. Because, let's be honest, if the planet's biosphere is as permanently wrecked as everything suggests, then getting off-world might be humanity's only real play for surviving the next few centuries. Fallout has always been about cycles. War, destruction, rebuild, war again. But space could break that cycle. It's a frontier that hasn't been poisoned, resources that haven't been fought over, a genuine clean slate that Earth literally cannot be anymore. The problem, as always, is people. The tech exists or could be rebuilt, but every faction that has ever gotten their hands on space assets has used them selfishly. And until that changes, all that potential is just going to keep floating up there, silent and wasted, while everyone below keeps making the same mistakes. words. Final picture. Alright, so let me pull all of this together because when you lay it all out, the picture of what's above the Fallout world is kind of staggering. We've got satellite networks that are either dormant or semi-active, capable of being tools of salvation or instruments of destruction depending on who gets to them. We've got at least one confirmed orbital platform that's been running on autopilot for over 200 years, with its weapons capability intact. We've got the very real possibility of orbital weapons systems still loaded, still aimed at a planet that's already been destroyed once. We might have a lunar base that could be the single most preserved piece of human civilization anywhere, and we've got an alien species that's been watching all of it, and probably taking notes. That's definitely not helping anything. Space in Fallout isn't empty. It's packed with the leftovers of pre-war ambition, the remnants of a species that reached for the stars while poisoning the dirt under its own feet, and every piece of it, from the smallest relay satellite to the biggest alien mothership, is both a potential lifeline and a potential doomsday device, depending entirely on who touches it first. People in the wasteland look up at the sky and just see stars. But between those stars, invisible and silent, is this entire network of human achievement that nobody alive remembers how to use. I think that might be the real irony of the Fallout universe. Not that humanity destroyed itself, that part's pretty straightforward, but that the tools to fix everything are literally floating right above everyone's heads and nobody can reach them. 200 years after the Great War, the sky above the wasteland might be the most important real estate left in the world, and it's the one place that nobody can get to. That's what happened to space in Fallout, and whatever's still up there might end up mattering more than anything that's down here. If you enjoyed this video and want to see what actually happened after Fallout New Vegas, click the video on screen right now.